The next person on the list is Trina Sampson, and
Hi, my name is Trina Sampson, and I am the librarian at Mount Elementary School. And I have been made aware of the choice, the possible decision to put the new White Center Library across the street from Mount View on 107th and 15th. And when I told my students about that, they were ecstatic. They really loved the choice of that spot. I like it for 3 reasons. One is that it is so close. Our students can just walk there after school, do their homework, do their reading logs. Several of the students, several wrote letters explaining why they would like the library there. But several of them mentioned that if their parents were going to be late, they could go to the library and read and wait for their parents. Or if they have siblings at Cascade and Evergreen, their siblings who get out of school earlier can wait for them in the library, and then either the students could come there to meet their siblings, or their siblings could go over to pick them up. The second reason is that it would really be turning a eyesore in our neighborhood into a beautiful, wonderful, positive spot for our students. Right now, it is a vacant lot. It is attracting homeless people and trash, garbage, and it would just be really nice to get rid of that and put a beautiful library in its place. And the last reason, which is really close to my heart, is if it's built in that spot, the White Center Library now can remain open while it's being built and still serve my students. If we have to wait a year and have that library closed while they add on to it, my students will have no place to go after school, and I don't keep the school open and the library open until I leave at 4:10, and that's when the kids have to leave the library as well. So for evenings and weekends, to have some place to go to that's safe, that they can get help with their homework or just stay out of trouble, it's a really important thing. And I just cannot imagine what my students would do if they had to wait a year for the library to reopen. So I just think it's a really, I think it's a great spot that you've chosen, and it's so close to all those apartments, and it would be a really positive change to our neighborhood and our community.
Thank you, Trina. I noticed that you checked off that you wanted an update from staff. It is on the agenda, so will that suffice, or is there a specific?
I was just thinking down the line, if you were sending emails to people who were interested, I suppose I should address that. Would you guys like the letters?
That'd be great. Thank you.
I didn't get them to the White Center community in time to have them make copies for all of you. I apologize.
Thank you. The next speaker is Chestine Edgar.
Hello, my name is Chestine Edgar, and I live in Burien, Washington. And I'm here tonight to speak with you about the placement of the new proposed White Center Library. And like Trina who just spoke, I really am excited at the possibility that it could be over there by Mount the elementary school. The location of the White Center Library, I believe, should be located in the White Center. All of the arguments that have been advanced here recently about why it should stay in Burien make absolutely no sense. In January of 2012, Barbara Dockin, who represents the North Highland Unincorporated Council, and Mike Martin, the Burien City Manager, made public statements stating that the current White Center Library, when it was rebuilt, needed to be moved further north into White Center. And I have attached an article that you'll be able to see, but I'm going to read just an excerpt from it that they said. Dobkin noted that a location to downtown, closer to downtown White Center would be optimal. While it has in the past stirred concern that it's too close to Seattle, Martin pointed out the possibilities of the economic spin-off. He consulted Wynn, that's his senior management assistant. For a bit of information, about 35,000 people from Seattle use county libraries in this area. And if they also came to patronize White Center Business District while doing that, it would help see businesses rise in that area. So it's clear that both Burien and the North Highland Unincorporated Council strongly supported moving that library north, okay? Then in November of 2012, Jerry Robinson, Rose Clark, and again Barbara Dobkin appeared before you, and they stated that the new White Center Library in fact shouldn't be moved north, it should be moved deeper into Burien, further south. That is in direct contradiction to what they had stated in January. Ms. Dobkin went on so far to say that White Center was far too dangerous of a place to have a library. White Center has 4 elementary schools in it, 1 middle school and 1 high school that's been broken into 3 high schools in it. If it's safe enough to have all of these schools in its border, it's safe enough to have a library. And it has had one for years. Why this group keeps fighting the placement of the library appears to be more of a political issue rather than for the welfare of the community or the students in the community or even the residents in the community. And it troubles me. It appears to be more politically driven rather than what is the real intent of what libraries are about. I think that does not serve the White Center community well. So I am strongly encouraging you, please, to build this library. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks to the, welcome to the people that have just come in. We are in our public forum part of our agenda, and people have signed up. We're going to go through all the lists, and then at the end, we'll check and see if there's anyone who hasn't been able to sign up, and you'll have an opportunity to speak. The next person on the list to speak is Pat Lemoyne. Pat Lemoyne.
Hi, my name is Pat Burien, and I'd like to talk about the White Center Library also. I see this as a continuation of the annexation vote we took just a few months ago. And it seems like, from what I've heard of the people who are trying to get this moved into Burien, it's more of politics in that during the annexation, we were told that if we didn't join Burien, we were going to lose our libraries. And here we are today, you guys are talking about $5 billion in rebuilding a library in White Center. And basically, I see it as a bunch of spoiled children who've essentially, you didn't join our city, and we're going to take off, we're going to take our library and we're going to go back to Burien, and no, you can't have a library. That's the attitude that I seem to be picking up. Maybe I'm wrong, but you know, anyway. But the thing is if you guys have taken a look at this spot by the middle school, 2 previous people before me have spoken on it, go over there and take a look at the neighborhood and take a look at the spot they've chosen. Like they say, it's right across the street from an elementary school. There are apartment complexes all around there. I drove around there the other day. It seemed like there was over 600 apartment units just within a block or 2 of this facility. I got in my car and I drove. The local middle school is slightly over half a mile away, which is about as far as I had to walk to go catch the bus when I was a kid. Just beyond that is the local high school. I don't think you could find a better location in order to put this library, which would be a great asset to White Center, and I think it would be the most bang for the buck for the hard-earned tax dollars that have been made and you're putting into the community. I think you couldn't go wrong with this location. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person on the list is Rose Clark from Burien City Council.
Thank you very much. I am here to read a letter to you from the Burien City Council. The City of Burien learned yesterday that the Commission intends to discuss and likely decide on the location of the new White Center Library at its meeting tonight. The staff recommendation in your agenda packet suggests that you select the site inside unincorporated King County, north and outside Burien city limits where the White Center Library currently exists. The City of Burien opposes that action and instead asks you to delay any decision until the public has an adequate chance to comment. You will recall that the White Center Library is the last of the libraries to be rebuilt with the bond money voters approved in 2004. That bond measure contemplated rebuilding the White Center Library at its present location in Burien. Deciding not to do so is a significant deviation from the promise made to voters and warrants their input. This is the third time the Commission has considered moving the library from its current location. In each of the previous attempts, the Commission relented because of significant objections from the community. This alone should signal you that the public has a high level of interest in this decision and that you owe them the right to participate in making it. Public comments on a Tuesday night at a meeting held far away from the affected community, taken a few minutes before the Commission considers this proposal for the first and perhaps the last time, does not do justice to your obligation to hear the community by any estimation. To the contrary, you are being encouraged to rush to a decision tonight and are being told that if you don't, the opportunity to secure this particular site evaporates. This may or may not be true, but what we know for certain is that by acting tonight, you foreclose the possibility of any meaningful public comment. Burien City Council members received a letter late last week asking if you would be willing to host a community forum on this subject. We would. We don't know whether any of the sites under consideration tonight are appropriate, but we know that your decision will be better informed by asking the public what it thinks rather than rushing to judgment without their information. And it's signed by our mayor, Ryan Bennett. And I would add that we stand here still ready to facilitate a meeting, your meeting in our city council chamber anytime you wish, so that the public who will be affected by this decision can weigh in and help you understand the needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rachel Levine.
Good evening, my name is Rachel Levine. I live at 430 South 124th Street, Burien, 98168. Once again, I'm here to ask for your support in making sure that the process by which our new library in White Center is open, transparent, and supports public input in a way that people who live there, who work there, actually have a way to express their views. This may, in your eyes, constitute a public forum, but this is not what we expect. We expect an opportunity to ask you questions and get answers. For example, Site A, in which you taught, that's where the current library is. That is the site which we voted on in 2004 And by now, you have all received, and I hope read, the little 2-page review of the history of White Center Library and all of our problems in the last 2 years or so. Did you all get that? Yes? And so what we have is, we have a community that's very interested, and it's true, it has been involved in the political life of that community. And this is why we need the opportunity to come together where we can have some answers. For example, Site A, the first site, you do not give an asking price for that piece of property. You give what the assessed value is. And I have come before you on a number of times and asked, had you investigated that property that was due south of the present library that was looked like a storage place for a construction company? I was told by another member of the guild that he also talked to the owner of that property, and that owner was willing to talk. Again, I do not know where your due diligence was in finding out what the asking price of that piece of property might be. It was totally left off of your site summary here. That is why we need to have some answers. We need to have a lot of answers about that property that you're suggesting. There are many good reasons why this site C might be a good location, but there are not all the questions have been answered as to who the property actually has been owned, how they see that property being developed in the future. It is no secret that low-income housing has been pushed south into our part of the city, or whatever was the city, of the county. It has continued to do that. If that is part of the plan, then the citizens need to know how much more they're going to need in terms of supporting whatever the future development of that property might be. There are lots of questions that need to be asked, and we need to have some honest answers about it. And so I appreciate once again coming before you, and I hope that you will take it very seriously that we have looked at this for a long time. I have to tell you that with all the beautiful libraries that you have built, renovated, extended, and all of that, it really does cross my mind that we were seen as the low-hanging fruit that you could allow to hang there until you did whatever else you did, because you gave us 2 answers on the annexation. The first time around was that this board would not make an answer, would not act because of the potential of annexation. And now all of a sudden, it's all right to put the library in wherever it might sometime fall. I am a very strong supporter of the King County library system. You've used my name to help support levies. I want our library to be serviced by the King County library system. That's the best. We want the best for our community and for the whole long vision that we might have for our community. So visionary, yes. We want a library that will be there, supported by the funding that our taxpayer dollars have gone to. Now your eyes are blazing away, so thank you very much.
Thank you. In our public forum that we have 4 times a year, it is an opportunity for people to ask questions and staff to respond. Sometimes the response comes during the actual discussion item or the action item. I'm just going to check in with staff right now. Do you have any comments on on the questions that were asked.
I think we've got an analysis and a presentation that will cover some of the questions that have come up, and board members have any further questions, we can respond at that point in time.
Thank you.
Excuse me, is that the analysis that's going to be made available in White Center area so more people can hear it, or is it going to be given tonight?
The analysis will be given tonight, I believe.
It's the analysis that's in the board packet.
Yes.
Board meeting.
So only those people here tonight will be able to hear it, is that correct?
That's what we're going to be discussing tonight. That's correct. The next person on the agenda is Stephanie Dotson.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Stephanie Dotson. I live at 10256 4th Avenue Southwest. And I've lived at that address for 70 years, since I was a gleam in my father's eye. And I have been a user of the King County Library System as a student at White Center Heights Grade School in the 1950s. And we always had a King County Library directly north and from the back playground of White Center Heights. And that library was an extremely important part of my educational upbringing. In particular, the summer reading program, where we read a number of books and got a certificate in the end. With regard to something else, the librarian, who was an extremely wise and erudite woman, there was a particular book on the shelf that I remember discovering about 1955 as a 5th grader. And all of us knew that book was there, but were afraid to check it out. But we figured we could sneak it out under our coats. And indeed we did. And that librarian was so astute that after about a week, she always quietly reminded that person that she was sure had the book, that it was about time to return that book. So, a very important part of the education in my young life came from the King County Library System. And to this day, I remember it with fond memories and a few giggles. I hope you will all be able to ascertain what the topic of conversation in that book was. The point is, we always had a library branch next to White Center Heights Grade School. And we are thrilled that we now have a branch in the new Greenbridge development adjacent to White Center Heights Grade School. White Center always had a main library, and it started about the time my mother helped organize the kindergarten program in the old field house in 1949. And the library was in the basement of that field house building. And then they went on to occupy a building directly to the east of the field house building for many years, until the building the new location was developed up on 16th Avenue Southwest. I have always thought that that library was much too far from the center of the White Center community. It's a difficult site to get to. It only has one disabled parking spot, something some years back I didn't have to worry about. But I always felt that it was really far separated from our community. And so I would really like to support the site on 107th behind Mount View Grade School as a site for a library that would be closer to the heart of the community. I think we deserve a library that has much better access geographically. And I certainly think that closing a library that now exists for a period of time to redevelop at the same site is really, would really be unfair to the community. I look back and think how important and how much time I spent in the library as a young adult, and how much time I spend in the library even in this day as I get a little older. And my husband, who will speak after me, was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. in the library, his access to the library will be extremely important. And the closer to the business district, the closer to the banks and the areas that he, and buildings and businesses that he clearly remembers and can get to easily, weighs very heavily on my mind. The most important thing to remember is White Center has always had two libraries. We have a new one at very, very close to the original original location north of White Center Heights Grade School, and I hope that our main library will be much closer to the central business area community as it has been going back into the 1940s. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ted Radford.
My name is Ted Radford. I agree with Stephanie. She's my bride for 44 years now. And I'm the one that's getting Alzheimer's, my psychiatrist at the Veterans Administration tells me. And I still can recite all of Hamlet. And I know the presidents backwards, all 44 of them. And so I can't really tell, but libraries are so important. I'm one of those people that has as many books as President Jefferson had. And, but I believe the library needs to be there for all of the citizens. And I very much supported the last vote. I would like to see White Center someday have its own city and not part of another city, Burien, for instance. And anyway, we need libraries, and I would certainly like to see it at White Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Pat Price.
Thank you. I'm going to first read you a letter from another member of the community who could not be with us this evening. Dear KCLS Board of Trustees, only last night did I find out that a site selection analysis for the proposed replacement of the White Center Library had been finalized and was to be presented to you this evening for your approval of Site C. This came as a complete surprise to me, although I have been a member of the White Center Library Guild for several years and currently serve on its board. Being a member, my partner and I keep tabs on what is happening to the White Center Library and have followed the various suggestions for a new library and its siting with more interest than most residents of our great community. What we cannot understand is how the Library Guild was never asked for their input, as suggested in community preference in Phase 3 of your packet. Members of the Guild are one of the groups of residents most closely associated with the White Center Library, having spent many hours of volunteer time to provide for that library extra programs for youth and teens. I suppose the and/or, in quotation marks, from the third item under community preference, which states input from advisory board and/or friends of the library, says it all. We lost out on the or. I would have preferred to present this in person this evening, but I've had a previously scheduled meeting of Black Watch captains to attend. Therefore, I've asked Pat Price to read this into the record for me. Respectfully, Gilbert Loring, 10009, 20th Avenue Southwest, White Center. Now, just a note of my own that I would like to make as a Boulevard Park resident and having lived in White Center for over 30 years. I ask this board to keep the promise you made to our community. We passed that levy in 2004 in good faith that we would someday see the results of what we have been paying taxes for all these years. Why would you want to build a library with our King County taxpayers' money that may end up belonging to the city of Seattle, not under King County Library Board jurisdiction? Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Jesus Rodriguez.
Evening. I hope that my mind is as good as that young man who can recite Hamlet and everything else. And I don't even have Alzheimer's, at least I don't think. On behalf of a community volunteer organization that has worked for over 10 years in the White Center area, Burien area, and surrounding areas, and I myself have been worked or lived in White Center for at least 10, 15 years, at best. I'm always concerned that we all come and say a bunch of things, and yet for people that don't speak the language, English, they're always kind of left out. And politics being what it is, groups travel back and forth. I want this on this side because of this reason, this side for the other reason. And so I'd like to at least, on behalf of ethnic minority groups, language groups that are growing in our areas, who we've offered refuge in this country, Samoans, Eritreans, Bosnians, and a whole bunch of other folk that come here to expecting a promise of a better life, a better future, and really have difficulties with the language, just getting started. I'm going to make a pitch to you that on behalf of those folks who my organization has worked with for over 10 years, along with the White Center Community Development Association, putting annual summits where we draw 400, 500 people that otherwise don't get access to speak before you groups or any other groups. On behalf of them, I'd like to speak to your decision in terms of putting this White Center Library, on Southwest 107 for a number of reasons. One is because of the number of apartment complexes where a lot of these people that I'm talking about live at. They would have easier access, and the question of access is very important, at least to me and to people I represent. Easier access in terms of trying to learn the language, because I know most libraries that you promote or people promote do have access to computers that a lot of us don't have. Do have, in many occasions, promote English as a second language. And I know some people don't like to hear that because we're foreigners or whatever. But let me tell you, we're not foreigners. I'm a veteran of the Vietnam War, and I paid the price along with a lot of my people. And so I like to put that to rest, that I love America, I fought for America, and I continue to do that. And so, but I would like also for the underdog, for the people that can speak for them, is to have access, so they can go and take their children to read. Single parents, mothers, single mothers that a lot of times don't have access to buy books for their kids. And now I notice that there's books in different languages. So for those reasons, I'd like to make the pitch for you to really seriously consider putting that close to Southwest 107. There's schools close there. There's at least 400 or 500 people live in the area, mostly low income. There's a large Hispanic church in the area, and I know that they surely could use it. I'm not trying to push just for them, but I mean, there's a whole bunch of other people. And so consider seriously, and I know that if people say, well, no, we'd like to have more public meetings, get more input. Hey, if I made the time, other people made the time to come here. I mean, I'm not making excuses for no more meetings, but you have to make a decision sooner or later. And there's always going to be disgruntled people. I may be one of them, but at least I'm making the pitch. Put it in, one step. Thank you.
Next person, I'm gonna try to read this name. The Hank Upkes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Hank Upkes. I go to Burien High School. Apologize for my faulty attire. Just got back from track practice. So I am here to pitch that the library should go to 107 because I think that's a really good place to have it. You have a high school, a middle school, and the elementary school all within just a few blocks. I have many friends who use that library almost every day, and if you go in at any time, you'll see basically every one of the computers being used and a ton of people in there. So with the relocation further south, I bet a lot of them wouldn't want to walk there, and it would get a lot less use. And in addition, I helped clean up the area C on 107. And I'd hate to see it just kind of regrow back in and not be used for a library and all that. So I think it's a no-brainer, and that we should put the library in an accessible and usable place, and that we should go for it. Thank you. The next speaker is, and again, I'm gonna try this, Marquise.
One of the few that get it right when I read it. Marquise Roberson, and I'm representing the White Center Community Development Association. I'm the community builder for the organization, so my job is basically to be in contact with the community, as much of the community as possible, and kind of get their read on how they feel about things. It's really funny to me how there's so many points of contention for a library right now. Who would have thought there would have been so much like back and forth about it? But it just shows the passion that comes from the community around something that's truly important when you're thinking about educational scores and Highline School District, particularly in that part of town, with the Mountain View and White Center Heights and Cascade and Evergreen High School campus. They need a library to help bring up some of those scores, and a lot of the students use it. Like Hank said, students are over there all the time using it, going back between McDonald's and the library and making sure they have study time to be there. At one of our community gatherings where we get about 500 people to come out and provide information about different issues in the community, we polled the community on what they felt their opinion was on the library siting or where it should go. Some of the pointed questions that we asked were, we are getting a brand new library, much larger than the White Center library we have right now. What should we do? Should we shut down the current library and build a new one at the same site, select a new site that the library should be on, and keep the one that's open now during construction? And a resounding 84% of the people said that we should build a new one and keep the one that's currently there open. Another question we asked is, if the new White Center library is built as a new site, should it be closer to our elementary schools, which are Mount View and White Center Heights, or should it be further south into Burien? 98% saw that it should be closer to the middle school, the elementary school, sorry. Another really important point for the community was the expansion of books and publications in different languages, because the area we live in is very diverse. And 97% said that it should be expanded into Somali, Spanish, and Cambodian. I think that's kind of reflective of the White Center community in itself. And I hear everybody who gets up here and says the White Center Library. You have to keep that in mind, guys. Like, it's a White Center Library. Let's keep it in White Center. Let's think of who this is interested in, who's the interest for the people and community of White Center, and make sure that we're thinking about that. And also thinking about some of the research that I did on the library, King County library system. It says that they're moving to a state where they're about more community, making it a community space, getting librarians out of the community to draw community in so they feel comfortable. Let's try and get more community to come in and talk about where this library should be. White Center is 17,000 people roughly after annexation. Let's get the inputs from the people to see how the library should go. What are some of the further things that should be done with it? Last point, sorry, I took some notes. I think I covered it all.
Great.
So, thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. The next person is Margot.
Good evening. My name is Margot Fanini, and I live in White Center. I have been a resident of White Center for, well, I might give myself away, but for a half century. Okay. I have great memories of the library in White Center. It is where I am part of an immigrant family, and so my parents couldn't speak English, and it was my job as the oldest sibling to teach my younger siblings what they needed to read. So I was kind of like the pseudo teacher. And the library was the place that, you know, helped us, helped my sisters and brothers learn to speak English through reading books, opened up so many things about what was available to us. And it was the librarians there, I have to add as well, that they were the ones that helped us, like gave us access. Like, you can go into a library, it doesn't mean you know where to find things, but the librarians that were there were awesome. And so it's to them and to the fact that the library was in my community that I could walk there and take my two sisters and my younger brother in tow during the summer months. They had reading programs. And so because the library was there in my community, we all love books. We all love being educated. And it's a lifelong passion, reading and garnering more knowledge. So that being said, now I work currently with, I oversee a number of after-school programs, and so my little group here is, just to point out, I run a site currently in White Center, and so we use that library. In the summer months, we partner with the library program there. Our teachers take our kids to the library, and I just want to say that I put in my vote for the new site because it's really close to where elementary school, middle school, high school, we have access. And for all the immigrant families, like he said earlier, there are so many families from diverse communities who live in White Center. And I want them to have as much access as I had when I was a child, growing up in White Center. And so I'd love for you guys to keep the library in White Center for my community and put it in the new location so that more people have more access. So I just brought my little friend here because I think it's important to know the next generation coming up, that they have a heart about these things as well.
My name is Olivia, and I love to read in the library. I love coming there. I have fun picking out books and have fun reading them. So I want to keep the library in the White Center area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tamsin Spengler.
Good evening. My name is Tamsin Spengler. I'm a resident of West Seattle for, I won't say how many years, half a century plus. I am also the Vice President of the WCDA Board of Directors, White Center Community Development Association Board of Directors. And I'd like to read a letter that I'm submitting to you tonight, I just gave to your administrator. Dear King County Library System Board of Trustees, as mentioned in previous communication with the King County Library System, the White Center Community Development Association, which I'll now refer to as the CDA, has a 10-year history of economic and community development in White Center. Our successful projects include Unity Village, which is 30-unit affordable housing complex, annual community summits, spring clean events with over 500 volunteers, and the Promise Summer Celebration with over 1,000 individuals and families participating. The CDA partners with community residents and stakeholders to ensure community voice in decisions that impact White Center. We understand that there are current discussions underway regarding a possible new location for the White Center Library at Southwest 107. At our last community summit, held on December 2012, an overwhelming majority of the residents who attended participated in an electronic polling system that strongly supported building the new White Center Library close to an elementary school, or at least in White Center proper. The community also asked to ensure that imprinted information about the process of building the new library be made available in several languages so that more families could stay informed about this process. As a result, on behalf of the CDA Board of Directors, we are submitting this letter in support of keeping the library in White Center. The CDA is eager to work with the KCLS to not only locate our new library there, but are eager to work on expanding the site for other public benefit, such as retail and other economic development options that we believe will greatly improve the south end of our commercial business district. The CDA stands ready to support KCLS and other community partners in developing a community process to engage families in this important decision. Staff is available to answer any questions or provide additional professional support to the King County Library system as needed. Sincerely, Tamsin Spangler, Vice President, Board of Directors. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. The last speaker on the list is Asta Tata.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank all of the people that came to tonight's discussion. I heard a lot of good ideas and good thoughts and wonderful inspirations. I feel still at this point, however, that before we make a decision, a final decision on the location, that we have other voices that are not here. Because I think it is important that we hear from as many people in the community as possible. I have no actual strong feelings one way or the other, because my focus, as you already have known from hearing me a lot, is for what is best for the students. And I'm looking at practical things like making sure wherever we build the library, we have good, safe walking traffic for the students when they go from their schools. What are the economic diversity that we would encourage in our White Center community versus the wonderful cultural diversity we have. We want to be sure also that we have a balanced community, a strong community that has not only a lot of high-need citizens, but also everyday citizens that pay taxes. That's an important part. There's a lot of factors involved in locating a library wherever you put it in the community. And I think we need to stand back a little bit and take time to look at all the factors involved that will bring us the best kind of White Center community library we have in our neighborhood. Because I think all of us agree that is what we're here for, and that's what we really want. And I want to, I attended the American Library Association Midwinter Conference, and I was very inspired by the fact that with the polarity and the fact that we have so many people at opposite ends of the spectrum in our country fighting each other, not speaking to one another, these different factors have to learn to come together. And the suggestion that I thought was wonderful at the ALA conference was that libraries provide that transforming role, the facilitating role to help communities to come together by creating that open space. And I think our community is a wonderful way for us to begin that road. And I think we should open it up, have a lot of opinions, have the people speak up, listen to all the factors that are involved and make a decision. What is the future for the support of the library if it gets taken over by Seattle? What's the economic demands made of a community that has very high need community people, as well as we need people that can pay taxes, all right? So there's lots involved in here, and we're going to build the best library for our students if we can open this arena up, have the library be that facilitating role, and bring our community and build the best White Center library. So that's what I wanted to say. And I think one practical thing you can do is have an address group where when you make decisions that involve our library, that groups like the CDA, Library Guild get timely information that that's happening so we can make some really good responses and study and make sure our responses are not just off the beat because we just have a day or two advance notices. I think you're going to get the best kind of input from your community that way. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last person on the list. I'd like to ask if there's anyone who has not signed up yet who'd like to speak. And if you can hang in there, Rachel, and let me just check with...
I have a letter to read from Joe McDermott, our county council person.
Okay, thank you. So if we can maybe, so there's one, there's another, anyone else that would like to speak? So go ahead, Rachel. Yes, and Rachel, we also, we received that letter too.
Well, I would like to read
Yes.
it so the public
Please.
hears it. And I thought either Council Dermott or and his assistant would be here tonight, so I didn't realize that I would actually read this. So this was addressed to the president of the board of trustees. I didn't know that Ms. Bricklayak is now the president. At any rate, a community's library serves as its epicenter, its learning and gathering space. This couldn't be truer for the White Center Library. Visit any day and you'll be greeted with computers in full use and kids studying with volunteers. These services are vital for White Center, where 25% of the population lives below the poverty line. Last year, the board saw the passion White Center has for its library. Community members drove to the east side of the county and packed your meetings. Today, the board may vote on moving the location of the library. This is a different direction than that which was approved by the voters in 2004. I understand that making such changes is within the purview of the board, but I respectfully request that the board undertake a comprehensive public outreach effort before it decides where to site the new White Center Library. A robust conversation with the public will help the board make an informed decision and assure continued strong public support of a vital community resource. Sincerely, Joe McDermott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we have a gentleman in the back there.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark Ufkus. I'm the president of the White Center Chamber of Commerce. I live in White Center. I also have some rentals in White Center, some homes that I rent to my family and friends. And we have submitted a letter on behalf of the Chamber that indicates the priority location that we see as a smart investment for the King County Library System as well as for the White Center community, and that is the vacant lot on the corner of 107th and between 15th and 14th Avenue Southwest. I have a PowerPoint I wanted to quickly show you, and it'll only take a second. I think it's worth it. I have some photos of the site, of the neighborhood, and it'll give you a sense for what this is all about and what the questions are. And if she can set that up. We have gone out and visited with almost 24 businesses on the south end that are close to the site that is under consideration as the highest priority. And every single one of them supported doing something positive like a new library in that location. That has been a long-standing That lot is a great location for the library, but it's also been a challenge to the community. We were involved, my son alluded to our scouting effort. We had a group of Boy Scouts. We had people camping in that lot, using drugs and alcohol in that lot. It was overgrown and they could hide in there. And let's see if we can pull this off. There, she sees it. And this PowerPoint is only available because my 15-year-old helped me with it. That's what it is. You've got to have kids to help you keep up. The important point is that we organized a group of Boy Scouts to go in and clear that lot, and it was a social problem for the community. They did that, and we heard from the business owners afterwards that people were not using it in the negative way that they were before. Now, it's a little bit overgrown now again because we were asked to step back. We were going to go back and clean it again this year. And they said, well, why don't you take a break and let's see what's going to happen with the lot. We don't know what's going to happen. So we stepped back. The important point is that this location, we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits. You've heard many of them already, so I'm going to go very quickly over them. But the important point is this is not only a great location for the library, but it's really a problem right now in White Center. And if you make the right decision and do this and put it there, it's really going to be a good thing for this community, for the business district, and for the entire community. Now, I don't, is it working? Let's see, and what else? And what I can offer is, you've heard about the apartments that are nearby. We went and counted apartments to the south of the site that is the highest priority. There are over 400 apartments that actually are on 5 different parcels that connect to each other and connect directly to the parcels in question. So there's 400 units directly to the south of the site. And we assume that, I would assume based on my knowledge of the rental industry, that probably 15 to 20% are Section 8, which are low income or supported in some manner. So these are some of these are low income community members that live in these apartments. And we think that's important because the vast majority of folks, low income folks, that's where they get their internet is in the public library. And secondly, okay, there's one of the pictures. That's one of our Eagle Scout candidates, and that's one of the new signs in White Center. Welcome to White Center. You can click the next one, or if you see all the languages up ahead, we have 5 of these welcome signs in 50 different languages. We welcome people to White Center in 50 different languages. We speak over 54 different languages. There you go. There's some of them. Does anybody recognize them? I see German, and I see Indonesian, but English. So click again. Every year, you heard about the CDA, we do a cleanup. We have had 600 volunteers that Celia and her crew organized last year, and we do this every year. It's a huge community event. We clean up the community. This is all volunteers, folks. We have a county government. We don't have a municipal government to do this work, so we do it ourselves. Click again. There's a new library. Look at the parking lot. It's full. It's always full. The demand here is, this library is in demand. We get a call every 2 weeks for our books that we have to go pick up. And that site is too small for a new library. If you're going to double the size of that library, you're going to have to go up. And if you have to go up, that means that people like me that have sore knees and are facing knee replacement are really going to struggle to go upstairs. There's not enough parking there right now. And if you double the size, you're going to need more parking. And if you go around the back, which I don't have a picture of, you can click the next one. There's the street sign. That's 16th Avenue looking south. If you go in the back, there's not even enough parking for your employees in the back at the site there. You guys, it's just not appropriate site. I mean, there's so much you can do with the new library. It's on 16th. I think 16th is too busy. If I had a kindergartner walking to this new library with a group of other kindergartners and a teacher, I don't want them walking on 16th. It's too busy of a street. I think pulling it off the avenue is a better, smarter decision. Go ahead and click. Here's the corner. Go ahead and click. The 107th and 15th. You're looking south is to the right. Here's the lot. We cleared all that out. It's an acre and a half that goes back. There's a small little house that's probably not worth saving, but maybe it is. But the point is, it's a great location. Hank figured out, my boy, he figured out how to put an arrow. I didn't know you could put an arrow on. He did. He put that little red arrow, and that arrow points to where Mount View Elementary School is. There's, what, 800 kids at Mount View?
610.
610, and my wife is president of Highland Citizens for Schools, and we're getting ready for our new bond. And the big challenge we have is we've got a lot of kids coming into the 2 elementary schools up north. It's a problem for them. So there's going to be more kids in that school. We're going to be crowded. And that is directly across the street. Click again. Here's another view looking west. I talked to Jill today. Jill owns the house right next door on the other side. She was one of that helped us understand all the problems in that vacant lot. She said, "You mean they might put the library there? That would be a beautiful place for the library." She loves it. Look again. There's looking in the back. There's the apartment complexes that begin on the back edge of this parcel. There's 400 units. 400 units go back there that are directly connected to this side from the back, all within half a block of the library. Click again. Oh, the bus. The bus. It's a bus stop. Click again. Here's the bus stop. The bus stop's directly across the street. It provides almost direct access to downtown Seattle, Westwood Village. It's a major bus arterial right in front of where you guys are thinking about putting this library. Click again. That used to be a casino and a bowling alley. Problem, we had one person murdered in that parking lot back about 6 years ago. It's now one of the largest Hispanic churches in the state. 800 people go on Sundays to that old bowling alley. It's a great contribution to the community. It's directly across the street. The Shell station here, Mr. Spencer, he was directly across the street from the site you're considering, and the new church is directly behind it. Mr. Spencer is a great man. His family's been in that site, that Shell station for 40 years, and he said, "Thank you for clearing it out. We don't have people going back there and doing all that stuff anymore." So he's a great neighbor and a great part of White Center business community in the chamber. Click again. Coronado Springs, go ahead and click again. You can click one, yeah, there. Coronado Springs, King County Housing Authority. There's 320 units of low-income housing. Many elders live in that high-rise, and in the lower apartments are many families. 320 units. That is directly across the street to the north of the site, the priority site that you're considering. Literally right across the street. They told us they were going to send in a letter, hopefully you got it, that basically says that would be a great asset for all the families that live in that complex and all the elders that live in the high-rise. Go ahead and click again. There's the front of the school, the site that we're looking west. The site would be directly behind that. Go ahead and click again. This shot was taken standing on the corner of the parcel that you're considering as your highest priority. So it's across the street. All the kids are going in from recreation. If those kids are going to come and use this library site, they're going to walk directly towards us to this gate. They're going to come through this gate. They're going to cross a residential street. No real traffic. A residential, some traffic, but very little. They're going to cross directly across the street about 50 feet, and they're going to be standing on the site you're considering as your priority for the library. It's literally the safest, easiest access you can get for these kids in this elementary school for this library. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. Look again. This is taken from one of the play fields of the school, and that top of the house is one of the 2 small houses that will probably be removed or demolished, or something's going to happen to them. I don't think they're safe. Look again. These are the apartments that butt up. The property that you're considering the highest priority property is directly behind all of these units. Go ahead and click again. There are more units directly on the other side. Those are all part of that 400 apartment units there. Go ahead and click one more time. There's another 8-plex that's right there within a stone's throw of the site. One more click. White Center, new White Center Library. Benefits of 107th and 15th. 700 apartments within half a block. 220 are low income with families. Mount View with 800 students. I'm sorry I got that wrong, but it will be 800 soon. Is across the street. Allows the current library to stay open during construction. It dramatically improves the commercial district. One last time. Give White Center a wonderful gift. Put the new White Center Library on 107th and 15th. Thank you very much.
Anyone else who'd like to speak?
I'm Barbara Dopkin. I live in White Center. I want to start out by just clarifying a couple of things. I noticed Edgar mentioned my name a few times. I did sit on the ad hoc committee with Mike Martin, and we were discussing things of what would be in a perfect world. One thing was possibility of a White Center library in downtown White Center. That was with the caveat that we would be annexed and our downtown area would improve under a city's jurisdiction. That community has been plagued with problems for many years. I did not make this statement that White Center is too dangerous a place for a library. I was talking about the fact that the business district itself would not be a safe place for the library. I live just a couple streets from the downtown area. I'm a bus commuter, and I walk through the downtown area almost on a daily basis. That area is plagued with problems. Mr. Ufkus himself at the Boundary Review Board in last January noted that the White Center Business District needed its own White Center needed its own gang unit. That White Center needed 2 patrol officers walking the beat 365 days a year. Before we would see any reduction in crime in that area. I live on a street where kids go out and play, just a few streets from the downtown area, but their parents do not allow those same kids to go downtown, and many of those parents don't go take their kids downtown because of the unhealthy atmosphere. So I feel that that statement that Ms. Edgar made needs to be corrected. I'm on the North Island Unincorporated Area Council, and we have long supported the rebuilding of the White Center Library at its current location. This board has received many letters from me, from past presidents of the NUAC, of the North Island Council, to that effect, stating that the library should be rebuilt at its current site. The North Highland Unincorporated Area Council, we've led the efforts in the community to have the White Center storefront deputy reinstated. We've led the efforts to have a club closed with multiple gang-related problems. We led the efforts to have several businesses have their liquor licenses denied. And we have, as I said, long supported the rebuilding of the White Center Library at the current location, where it best serves the needs of the community, especially those who attend the nearby schools. The students who most need access to the library are the middle school and high school students, many of whom lack home computer and internet access. The library should stay where it is to best serve them and the White Center community. Should get what they voted on in the 2004 bond levy. Not many of the elementary school kids will be walking to the library by themselves. It's the high school and the middle school students that will be using it independently. I want to talk about that property that people are talking about at 107. That property was owned by the Delridge Neighborhood Development Association up until January. They came to a NUAC meeting several years ago and told us they had purchased that property for $2.2 million to build 60 units of low-income housing on that site. They went into foreclosure, I believe, and it was January, just last month, that the property reverted back to the Washington Housing Commission. It's talked about that it's a vacant property, that it's an eyesore. It's been owned by this group since 2008, and my question has always been, why have they allowed it to be such an eyesore? They were the property owners, they should have had responsibility to our community to keep it from becoming an eyesore. Just curious that people now that have been promoting that we need this library in 107 and 15th are people that have been silent on this issue of rebuilding, of even having a library in White Center. And my concern is building a library on 107. Seattle is looking at our community. I was at a Seattle City Council briefing just last week where they said they will be looking at it at the end of 2013 or the beginning of 2014. If they're going to move forward, they're going to move forward by then because of the annexation tax credit expiration date. Why would King County build a library that might possibly come under Seattle jurisdiction? I don't understand that, and I would like some explanation of how that works and how the King County taxpayers will be reimbursed for that. I personally prefer King County Library system. I can use both systems living in the unincorporated area. I much prefer the King County Library system. The hours are better, the service is better. Seattle has had some problems over time with their libraries.
keeping them open, furloughs. I know they passed a library bond levy, and that's changed this last year, but it's still questionable. So in any event, I just want to end by saying that those of us who have worked on this library issue, and I would like the board to say tonight too, that there was an issue of us losing our libraries. There was an issue of the consolidation, and we lobbied for that not to happen. Things were put on hold. Suddenly the annexation vote fails and we're told we're going to get a library. That's wonderful. But there's a history there. Many of us stood out in the rain and the cold gathering signatures. We've driven out here numerous times to testify. And I feel that this process needs to be openly, honestly, and fairly decided. And it's time to do what's right for our community, to give us what we voted for in the 2004 bond levy, new White Center Library application. Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the questions that I heard from Ms. Dawkins was the Seattle King County crossings. Will that be discussed in our action items?
We'll explore that. We got that as part of the analysis and what would happen. But we can report on tonight. Some of that obviously will be subject to negotiation in the event of the annexation. We'll that'll be part of the analysis.
Thank you.
Yes. One more sentence.
Sure.
Not on the issue we've just been discussing. And I neglected to say this when I was here before. I want to thank the King County Library System. Between the King County Library System and the Highlands School District, you can go anywhere in the world. I was able to go through White Center Heights, Cascade, Evergreen, Highland Junior College, pass the math exam, go on to the University of Washington, become a registered pharmacist, join the United States Public Health Service, go to Barrow, Alaska to be a pharmacist. And I have to say that the King County Library System played a significant role in my lifetime. And I really guess I've never really met anybody to say thank you. And you're the ones here and you're it. And so I really want to say thank you. I don't mean to pat myself on the back. I'm telling you that the opportunities are endless. And they come from a community library with librarians who care, know who's got the book. And I want to thank you. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight? On that note, we have received several letters also. And I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, speaking, being here, being present for this. Our next item, we move on to action items. And so now we'll approve the agenda. So we need a motion and a second. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. So any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, the next item is approval of board minutes for January 29th, 2013. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. On to payment of bills, we have a report from the finance director.
Yes. So behind tab B, I have for you tonight both the final December figures for 2012 as well as the January report. So first looking at the 2012 figures, you see the general fund expenditures report for December. We finished at $93.6 million in spending, so that's up about $800,000 from what you saw last month in the preliminary figures. It brings us to 94.6% of the budget, which is pretty typical for us, and shows that we are, the growth was at 2.2% versus last year. So that's a good low figure and in line with what we had expected to see given our budget. Moving on to the revenues, we finished the year with $105 billion. That's actually $900,000 higher than budget. But I'll be quick to point out that roughly $600,000 of that is the E-rate revenue, and another $200,000 is related to the Enumclaw annexation, and neither of those were budgeted. So essentially, other than those two things, revenue is pretty much on budget, which again is really typical for us. And you see that the growth versus the prior year was down 3.2%, which was of course expected given the decline in assessed values. Moving then to the 307 report, our December figure is now at $3.8 billion. We were at 3.0 even last time, so we picked up another $800,000 in expenditures, mainly on the Newcastle and Auburn projects. And then a quick look at the 302 fund for December. The main thing I want to point out here is that in the final round of invoices, we did pick up some expenditures for the Tukwila project. So this is the first thing you're seeing in the 302 for Tukwila. And I had mentioned, I think last month, that we were funding that one out of the 302 because of the foundation donations that are a key portion of that budget. And the remainder will be paid out of the land sale proceeds from some libraries that land and libraries we've sold previously, all part of the capital plan. We'll fold it into the green sheet, which we're looking at later this evening. So now I'm going to hop into January. And for the general fund expenditures for January, we had $8.1 billion. Our monthly budget average now is 8.5 for this year. And I always like to point out in January, there are some unique things in the January expenditures. First, the operating leases. You'll see we're already at 12% of our budget. That's because of the accounting convention where the January shows actually 2 months worth of rent payments. What we paid in December was a prepayment for January, and then we also paid again in January for February. So accounting-wise, we booked both of those in this month. Then right below with the insurance, we're already at 30% of our budget. That $195,000 is the portion we paid last year that is applicable to service in 2013. So it's applied here. And then same story down at the very bottom for library materials. The $1.5 million, a good portion of that is the 2013 portion of periodicals and electronic database renewals that we pay annually. So it's the portion we paid last year that actually pertains to this year. Looking at revenues for January, there's never anything to say about revenue in January. We took in $418,000, and we can talk more as we get closer to April. Looking then at the 307 fund, only $43,000 worth of expenditures. That's because most of the invoices that came in actually pertain to work that was done in 2012. And so you saw that on the earlier version we just looked at. But the one thing I wanted to call your attention to here is if you'll notice at the bottom, I've added a row for 302 fund projects. The bulk of this report shows what's happening in the 307, but now with Tukwila we've got a project in the 302 that's all part of the capital plan. So I'm showing a total for the 307 and then showing our spending for the 302 so we can track against the grand total of spending at the bottom.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you remind me exactly about the 302 and the Tukwila? So we're going to separately account for all costs related to the Tukwila project, and then from that, the foundation contributions are going to be made into a 302 account?
Exactly. Yeah, we can't commingle the foundation contributions with the bond proceeds in the 307. So we need to put those into the 302. And since we have enough funds in the 302 related to the capital plan, land sales, enough to cover the rest of that project, it's going to work nicely to do it that way. And then lastly, the 302 fund for January, only $200 worth of expenditures on Tukwila project. Then on the payment of the bills, there is there's a fund transfer, but you do not need to approve that. That's one of the budgeted fund transfers. Any other questions? just raise it up.
Robin, do you have a question?
Oh, let's put it, it's flipped this way, so I think I just need to bring it higher.
So if any board members have a question for the finance director. So let's go ahead and turn to the approval of bills. That's the last page in section B.
I move approval of the payroll expenditures in the amount of $2,607,703.03.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have general funds resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I move approval of the construction bond fund 1988, number 302, for $33,872.64.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I move approval of the capital fund project fund 2005 and 307 in the amount of $2,5,649.11.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I move approval of the gift fund number 601 in the amount of $238.09.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That does it. We don't need to do the interfund transfers, so thank you. Thank you, Linda. That takes care of the payment of the bills. The next item for action items is number 4, Resolution 2013-01, surplus equipment attachment C.
Yes, and so we discussed this in the finance committee. We have one piece of equipment that is valued over $1,000 that we use to surplus. It is a Disk Express CD DVD security vault system. This was something that we pilot tested in one of our libraries, and we concluded it doesn't warrant expansion, and so we're going to surplus the equipment.
And we need a motion and a second on this.
I make a motion that we approve the King County Rural Library District Board of Trustees Resolution 2013-01, dated February 26, 2013.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that is moved, approved. And then our next item is Seattle Cross-Use Agreement, which I believe helps us with information to use for number 6. That's under attachment D.
And we discussed this as well in the finance committee, and this is related to requesting the board to pass a motion to extend the current cross-use agreement with the city of Seattle, and it's included in the packet, the existing agreement, which expired actually at the end of December. We met with staff at Seattle Public and discussed how to move forward and agreed that a 1-year extension would make sense. You can see the usage on the chart that's included, and the usage is slightly in KCLS's favor, but not much different than it has been over the time frame that we've looked at here. And the Seattle staff felt that with their library levy and the expenditures they'll be making to extend their open hours, to purchase more materials and more computers, that it made more sense to let them make those changes and see the impact of those changes and then see where we stand before trying to decide what steps to take regarding cross usage. And so we agreed to have our respective boards pass a motion to that effect. The SPL board has already done so. And so I'm certainly asking you to do so as well.
Thank you. So any questions regarding this?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful in light of the discussion we're going to have on the next point. Could you just explain the way the cross-use agreement works for Seattle residents and King County residents?
Sure. So we have an agreement in place that essentially says that KCLS and SPL patrons have access to both systems. However, SPL patrons are not able to place holds on materials with KCLS, whereas KCLS patrons are able to place holds with Seattle Public materials. And the reason for that is that we have, over the course of many years, measured the reciprocal usage, how much our patrons are using their library and vice versa. And at the time we made this agreement, there was a significant imbalance in the usage. And so the method we agreed upon to moderate that and to equilibrate the usage was for King County Library to implement this hold restriction.
So Linda, just to make it clear, residents of King County can go into a Seattle library and use Seattle libraries.
Yes.
And residents of Seattle can go into a King County library.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So we need a motion on this and a second?
I move approval of a 1-year extension.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We move on to our next item, White Center Library, that's behind attachment E.
Now, I'll start before Burien, our facilities department goes through an analysis. We've been trying to build a White Center Library for a number of years now. And just to kind of put a little bit of context in this, it was in our capital plan. Something, however, that the city of Burien annexed a fair portion of that White Center area, which was a substantial change in the condition. At the time of the bond issue, and we've gone through this history, but I think it's important to repeat it. There was a serious consideration by the city of Seattle. There was another mayor in place at that time who was very interested in annexing that area to Seattle. As a matter of fact, the Seattle Library and the King County Library System, kind of at the request of the city of Seattle, came up with an agreement of what would happen in case that area was entirely annexed by Seattle. So we had all those arrangements in place, contemplating that Seattle would annex the area. Seattle didn't annex the area, and Burien did annex a portion of it. They annexed a portion that went all the way up to the boundary of, just beyond by 2 doors, beyond the current library, leaving that White Center unincorporated area between there and the city limits of Seattle. So we were concerned that we had a library, because we just heard about the cross use, we were concerned that. How much closer I can get it. Let me try this. Does that work? Okay, so we wanted to come up with a way to get started on the project as soon as possible. And one of the alternatives was, instead of having a library that may be close to the boundary line of Seattle, we weren't sure at that point in time, we had looked at, and at the time had the ability to do a larger library, which we suggested if we move it south a little bit, that it would not be on the border regardless of what happened with any annexation decision by the community, and that we could get started on building a larger library. We had actually recommended a location closer to 128th, so that we could serve both the Boulevard Park and the White Center area. That received a lot of comment back and forth, but ultimately the board was requested by numerous, including King County Council or Executive Dow Constantine and the City of Burien, for the board to wait and see what happened with the Burien annexation of the White Center area before making a decision. The board agreed to wait, so we put the whole issue on hold until that issue was resolved. As you heard, it was resolved in November. We came to the board in November with an idea that if we could move the library north from its current location, then again, in a sense that it makes it immune from whatever decision happens. If it did become part of Seattle, then Seattle would have the responsibility to operate as a library. If it did, we continue serving that community. The board felt that it was worth looking at and instructed the staff to look for possible sites north and also compare those sites to the current library. And so on that we did. And last month we did indicate, we did talk to the Finance Committee about, we had some preliminary information about some of the sites that you're going to hear about tonight. We now have a full analysis of that and some important information, which we think at this point in time we recommended to the board to make a decision for one of those. But I'm going to now stop and turn it over to Dree Ralph, who's going to go through the analysis. Dree?
Yes, thank you. And I will be asking for some help from my colleagues at various points, starting with Greg Smith. So we're going to talk about 3 sites today. The first is Site A. This is, and he's going to point That's how Greg is helping here.
I'm good at what I do.
He's got special skills. So site A is our current library site. It also includes a parcel to the south. We're trying to compare apples to apples in this analysis, so we're looking to build a 10,000 square foot library with 40 parking stalls. In order to do that at our current site, we would need to acquire the site south of the existing library. Site B is currently occupied by a vacant restaurant, and it's located at 11060 16th Avenue Southwest, kind of mid-block there. And the third is a site that consists of 3 parcels of land located at Southwest 107th Street and 14th Avenue Southwest. Pointing correctly.
Down.
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 There we go. All right. So these are the areas that we're talking about. We did a site selection analysis using the site selection criteria that's been adopted by the board that we've used for all the bond projects over the last several years. The first thing that we look at when we analyze the sites is the visibility. We look at visibility from the street, traffic counts, other visual appeal, and we scored all of these sites the same. We think that the first site A and B have great visibility along 16th, which is a major thoroughfare, and we really like to have visibility at those. We scored site C high because you can see it from 16th, but it is also at the base of the business district that has been mentioned several times in public comments tonight. Site capacity we look at next. Site A with our current library site plus the parcel south certainly has capacity for the project we're proposing. Site B, the vacant restaurant, has capacity only for what we're suggesting. It basically is a full build out of the site from lot line to lot line. So that scores a number 1 because one of the bullets under site capacity is for future expansion. So if we chose site B, there is no option for future expansion. Site C, the state-owned parcel certainly has ample space for expansion. Next, we looked at access. We rated all of these sites the same for access. They are great walking distance to various things. They're on the same bus routes. We think that they do have great access. We moved to sustainability. In this, we scored the 2 sites A and B at 2 out of 3, but we scored site C slightly higher at a 3, and largely that's because of one of the bullets under that criteria is developed near existing and projected residential density. And I think we've seen much exhibited tonight about the density of and projected residential density in that area. Next, we looked at centrality. We also gave the state-owned site 1 extra point in this category because of its proximity to the retail, which is one of the things that we look at when we look at centrality. Under site infrastructure, we scored them all with a 3, which is our highest score. And then we get to cost and availability, and this is where we really start to see some differentiation in these 3 parcels or locations. In site A, we have our current site, but to acquire the site below, we don't have an asking price, but we do have an assessed price, and that's $818,800. Site B, the assessed value is $758,900, and the asking price is $1.4 million. And I'm going to turn it over to Linda, because she's much better at this to explain the third cost.
Okay, so as you know, the third piece is owned by the state, and they purchased the property with the intent of using it for a program that was approved by the legislature back in 2008 called the Rapid Response Program that was intended for construction of affordable housing and community facilities. And so they had to deal with an agency, a local community agency that was going to build affordable housing on the property, but that agency was unable to come up with the financing to actually construct the buildings. It was during the time of the economy collapsing. And so the state just recently foreclosed on the loan to that agency, and so they now have their title back to the property. And they have told us that we would qualify under the terms of that program because the library service the library would be one of the community facilities that could fall under the program. And so what that means is that we would be able to essentially get a loan on the property that would be a long-term loan, probably 30 years, that would have completely deferred interest. It would be either 0 or very low interest, 0 or 1%, that would be completely deferred for the term of the loan. So essentially it would be what they call a bullet loan, or sort of like a large balloon payment just at the end of the 30 years, but there would be a possibility to agree on an extension for another 30 years, or extend the loan out for another 30 years. So from a financial standpoint, it's extremely favorable terms.
So no payment for 60 years. Bill, were you going to add?
No, I am right now.
So with that in mind, we scored the current site plus the adjacent site at a 2. We scored the site that's the vacant restaurant at a 1, and we scored the state-owned site at a number 3, which is the highest. Then we move to the last phase, and this is community preference. And we have heard a lot from the community. You all have heard a lot from the community. We've heard a lot from about all of these sites, with the exception of the Mexican restaurant or the vacant restaurant. So we scored them the same, kind of neutralize that particular thing. We've heard very strong opinions in a number of different areas. Lease versus purchase is not part of the analysis. We were looking to purchase regardless. And then the final criteria we look at is partnerships. And in this, we scored our current site at a 2. When we buy the parcel to the south, if we select that site, there is extra land. So it gives us a chance to potentially co-locate. It is not a large piece of land, so we would have to look at what can really be done, but there is at least some option for co-location. We gave site B the lowest score because, again, we're lot line to lot line, not a lot of opportunity. And then we gave the last site, the state-owned parcel C, the highest score at number 3 because there is ample opportunity for co-location. The state, I think, actually desires that we co-locate with someone, would like it to be used, again, for community resources. It gives us a chance to know who our neighbor is, work, figure out who would be best for the community and best for the library. We think it can also enhance our service possibilities, and there can certainly be mutually beneficial joint development. So with that, the scores came down. Our current site plus the site adjacent at a 21, site B at 17, and then the state site at site C at 25. More certainly went into the analysis looking at centrality and other things, but those were the highlights. We can certainly answer any questions.
And then do you want to go into a little bit more detail about the conditions around the state site with the fact that they have they've asked us to look at this issue quickly?
Sure. In the discussions with the state, when I first started talking with them, they told me that they had a number of inquiries on the property. You know, they since they foreclosed on the loan with the other agency, they then had intended to turn around and sell the property. So they first told me they had a couple of inquiries regarding it, but then about a week to a week and a half ago, they called to let me know that 2 of those inquiries information had turned into actual offers, and that at least one of those offers was a serious offer at a price point that was attractive to them, and so so they were calling me back to kind of, well, you know, are you interested in this, because we've got this other offer that that's on the table.
So we've made a recommendation to the board. A couple of things I want to say kind of in closing to this analysis. This was not a site that was on our radar initially. It was brought to us by the community. When we first heard about it, we thought, well, it's not on 16th, and it wasn't. But as we actually looked at it, we saw that it was visible from 16th, and then when we saw where it was in relation to the commercial district, it became more attractive. And then when we heard the terms of the deal, it became really attractive to us. And here's why it's attractive. We need to get going with this library project. Costs of construction now really are starting to go up. We've been talking about that for a while now, but now we're starting to see evidence that construction costs are beginning to escalate. And if we don't get started with this, we're concerned about our ability to actually complete the project anywhere near the size that we want to build this library. The second thing is, this particular deal is so attractive, not only because it's a great deal, but also it gives us more resources to put into the construction of the library. It really does ensure, or gives us more assurance, and the community more assurance, that we can accomplish the development of a library of the size that we had identified in our capital plan. So we think that that's an important consideration as well. We didn't know that they had offers at the state, so we would want to have more time if possible, but frankly, this issue has been in front of the board for so many years now that I think you've heard everything there is possibly to hear about it. There is one further thing. We are participating with a number of other agencies and city governments in a mediation process about the governance. I'll be participating in that, and certainly, if we hear anything that's different or new news, I mean, that can be weighed into or factored into the decision. But honestly, from the staff's perspective, if you really want a 10,000 square foot new library in White Center, we think that this site, this gives us the best opportunity to accomplish that.
I'm going to make a statement at this point where I'm also, just for the public record, I'm also a Burien City Council person, so when there are issues that come up that deal with Burien, I choose to vote as a Burien City Council person in Burien on issues that involve library. And when I'm here as a King County Library Board member and Burien issues come up, I recuse myself. So I am moderating the discussion and possible action, but I will not be participating in the discussion or the action. So I wanted to just check in with my fellow board members. I know there was one question from the audience regarding in the future what would happen to the library if it no longer fell into King County's, KCLS's jurisdiction. That was one question that I haven't heard addressed yet. And I don't know if my fellow board members have any questions.
People are formulating questions. Let me respond to that. We understand through our bond council that if we use bond money for this project, which we would anticipate doing, that it would need to continue to operate as a library, even if it came under the jurisdiction of the city of Seattle. One way or another, and we have a current agreement which is due to expire in 2015.
Yes, at the end of 2015.
But like I say, the terms of that, things have changed so much that it probably doesn't make any sense. So we're probably going to have some kind of an agreement with Seattle in the event that they would annex. If we were to locate on this, we also have to have that for Greenbridge, which is in that same area too. So we already have that issue to work out with the city of Seattle. So we have to come up with some arrangement, which I would imagine would factor in the costs of the facility and the costs that we put into it, but also factoring in the amount that the citizens in that area are paying on the bond, plus the amount that the citizens in that area have contributed to the net asset, to the assets of the King County Library System. So I don't know exactly what that arrangement would look like. We obviously haven't negotiated yet, and Seattle isn't formally in the picture at this point in time. But we do know that if they were to proceed with annexation, all of those things would have to be, clarified so that as folks in that area were voting on annexation, they would need to know what would happen specifically, and we would intend to clarify that in a future agreement with Seattle.
So, Bill, I'm not sure some of the exactly what your answer is.
My answer is,
aside from that, we'd have to work it out. What's the anticipation? What, based on history in terms of?
well, first of all, Seattle and King County, Seattle has its own library, so we would not be we would not provide library service to any part of Seattle that is in Seattle. So that was the first thing. So obviously, that area were to annex into Seattle would then become the responsibility of the city of Seattle to serve. So if any library facilities that were there, we would assume, especially if because they were built with bond money and the city were required to operate as a library, we would have to negotiate with the city what the terms and conditions of the transfer of the property of the library facilities, both Greenbridge and the White Center Library.
So, has there been an occasion to date between Seattle and King County when, in fact, they've taken over Seattle has annexed an area where there's King County Library?
We don't have any experience with it. We don't have. The question was whether or not we have any experience with that. No, we don't have any experience with that. We do have with the city of Renton, before Renton became part of the King County Library system. If you recall, or maybe, I don't know when people were on the board, but actually Renton and Seattle together, right after we passed the bond issue in 2004, both cities came to us and negotiated different deals in the event that those cities which were not at that time part of the King County Library system, if they were to annex an area that was part of the King County Library system, how we would address the issue of the people paying off on the bond, which we can't relieve them of, and also the assets that people had contributed toward the library system.
So what was that agreement?
The one in Renton was that we would reimburse the city of Renton for the amount of their percentage of the bond issue and for the assets, but that we would also look and charge them for the cross use.
Yeah, it might be similar to talk about the one that is currently in place for the North Highland area, which is that the buildings would any buildings would be transferred to the city without any compensation back to us, and that also we would owe them a payment that the calculation would be roughly a little over $1 million, based on the size of the geography that gets annexed into the city versus the size of the geography that was originally up for annexation, and that was sort of an intent to reimburse them for sort of past assets, so that so the idea of the agreements were to sort of make sure that the present, past, and the future were all appropriately divided between the organizations.
And that agreement contemplated the existing library, the White Center and the existing library at Boulevard Park. And I think there was we had an actual dollar amount for the sale of those buildings that they would reimburse us for as part of that agreement too, I think.
No, in the North Highland agreement, the buildings transferred without any compensation.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Yes.
So, related to this, if we were to purchase the property at 107, the deal the state has offered us, and White Center is annexed into Seattle, would the city of Seattle assume that loan, that they get the same deal?
Well, that would be something that would need to be negotiated as a part of the whole deal with the state. But the city would be required to operate the facility as a library because bond funds were used to build it.
We're making the assumption, and we haven't checked it out, the state, but we're making the assumption that the same deal would apply to the city of Seattle if the library were there.
So, another way of kind of looking at the situation, if we built a library on 107, which is in an unincorporated area, and it were subsequently annexed by Seattle, it would have to be continued to be operated as a library because it would have been built with bond funds. And people really on either side of the line between Burien and Seattle could use it because of the cross-use agreement. And if we built it On the other, in the current location, Seattle people can also use it right now. Seattle people can use the White Center Library because of the cross-use agreement.
They do use it.
Yeah, so, so in a sense, in terms of providing library services, for the people on either side of the jurisdictional line, it doesn't really matter. Am I missing
Well,
something?
the only thing right now with the current agreement that we have with Seattle, Seattle residents do have some restrictions. on use of
Right, Seattle residents can't put holes on King County.
Or use ebooks from KCLS.
Although with the cross use that we just looked at earlier tonight, that if their expansion and increased funding has the impact that they intend it to, then we'll be in a position where there will need to be some steps taken to moderate that imbalance, which could mean some sort of lessening of the restrictions that we have in place.
So it'll be a little more even, probably,
Exactly.
in terms of the rights to use.
Yeah.
Well, our recent history with that is rather than use cash payments to equalize the level of use, what we tried to do is to, kind of use level of service to kind of equalize that. And so we would continue to look that way, so.
And then if I can just add one more thing to follow on to Robin's comment. While it need to be negotiated with the state, the terms of the annexation of Seattle, I think it's probably clear that the state's interest would be in keeping the library in operation. So I think they would be highly motivated to basically extend the terms of the loans to the city.
Thank you. Any other questions, or what would the board like to do?
I'd like to thank the people who did come here tonight and speak, and I think that you people who are here have the sense that we are going to take some action, which does not preclude continuing to talk about everything we heard tonight in the future. It seems like we've got multiple things going on, and we need to just be clear about our direction. We've got an opportunity for a business transaction that sounds too good to pass up somehow with the state of Washington. We've heard tonight about the patron benefits, which I've always find to be extremely tender. How people use the libraries, what their expectation is, children, adults, veterans, what the expectation is for patron service. And I think our programming is so key to our success there. And then the opportunity to sell the parcel we have, which is a benefit, another business transaction that may be a benefit to us. I was down there today, I was there for an hour, looking at the sites. I went in the library, get a feel for where things are and how things are in relationship to each other. And this site at 107 is not so far from the current library, and I agree with a couple of the speakers. Getting in and out of the current library on 16th is hard. Must be hard during high traffic areas. Moving the library around the corner to a place that's a little more residential, a place where we may be able to save some trees. Maybe we can have an off-leash dog park. It seems like that site, which is not so commercial, lends itself to more kinds of uses that we have in our system, detached perhaps. So I'm coming at this with what I feel to be an informed position, and certainly support keeping the conversation open as we move forward. But I thank you for the information.
Thank you. And so Jessica?
Yeah, I would also like to thank everyone who came, and we've received lots of input, not just here tonight, but a lot in the form of letters, and I take all that very seriously, and I know that everyone's interest, or I hope everyone's interest, is in maximizing the library facility and resources that we can bring to that community. I live just a few miles from there in Tukwila, and so I've visited the area a number of times over the period that we've been considering this. And one of the things that I really like about the possibility of the 107th site is being able to keep the library service open, or the existing library open during the period of construction. I am concerned about the rising cost of construction and taking advantage of the opportunity that we have now with this land that's currently owned by the state, and everything that has come before us. So again, thanks everyone for their input on this.
Well, I know that, I guess it was last year at some point, it seems like a while ago, because I know that I've personally been hearing from people and trying to learn myself, and going down and visiting the area, and a couple of visits with the city council and the mayor of Burien, and community groups, and I'm so impressed with the level of involvement that this community has shown in its library, and the level of passion and the seriousness with which it takes the issues dealing with the library. You that are here, and those of you that aren't here but have come in the past and have been active participants in making their library system great, it means that the community is going to flourish in the future. And you know, we all have the same goal, which is to have great, wonderful communities and resources for people in the community. So I know, as somebody who over a year ago made a motion to delay action on getting a new library for White Center, because we were not certain as to what was going to happen in the annexation. And it was hard to do that at that time, because this is a community that can really use it, and we've got the money, and we want to go ahead and provide these resources. So I feel like, even looking at the 3 sites that were presented, sort of without regard to the costs, what I've heard and what I've seen is I think the site on 107th is the best site. Then when you add to that the financial terms the state is willing to offer on that particular site, where basically we don't have to pay for land for at least 30 and maybe 60 years. And that's all, you know, in terms of my fiduciary duty as a guardian of the resources for the King County Library System, that's a great deal. So given those factors, I would like to make a motion that the board directs the staff to proceed to firm up the acquisition of what's been referred to as Site C on 107th, subject to new information, conditions, or grounds for reconsideration of the site selection.
I'll second the motion.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? With that, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion passes, and staff has been directed to pursue Site C. Thank you.